All right, so welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your time. And it's so good to see so many people interested in writing. It's actually really, really exciting. So I would just like, my name is Kath McIntyre. I would just like to acknowledge that tonight we meet on the traditional lands of the Kaurna people. That's where I am, on the Adelaide Plains. And Kate, you're in the lands of the Nurrunjeri people, and that we pay our respects to elders past and present, and we extend that respect to all First Nations people joining us today. Okay, so we will be recording and we will be sending you the replay, so you don't have to write all the notes down and cramp your hand with your pen. You'll receive the replay. Also, we will be having quite a lot of time for Q&A at the end. So please, please get your questions ready, put them in the chat. I won't be able to see them in the chat until the end, but we will have plenty of time to go through all your fantastic questions. So please start putting them in there. Okay, so here we go. Kate, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, and I know quite a few people who are there. So hello, everyone. And I'm Kate Howell. And I've written and had 6 books published. There's sort of a 7th bigger one, which is an e-book. But yes, it's been a bit of a process, and I'll share some of that with you. So the latest one is The Flourishing Woman, a mental health and wellbeing guide. So that's been the focus for the last couple of years, and it's out September 3rd around the world, really. So many years of experience in health, and I've worked with some of you in health, and always had the passion for mental health and wellbeing. So I was fortunate enough to be awarded the Order of Australia Medal in 2012 for services to mental health. And I'll
just ask if you could just mute yourself. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did radio for a number of years and learnt, that's fine, Yasmin, learnt a lot from radio, because you never knew what questions you were going to get asked, and had to be on your toes. And a psychiatrist once, I asked a colleague who's a psychiatrist to read one of my books, and she made the comment that I make complex things simple. And I guess that's been my goal, to get information out to the community and to everyone, and lots of practical tools, because I think that's very much, what people are looking for, as well as providing support through the books. I live down on the coast near the beach, and love my garden and walking my 2 dogs, Leo and Mia, and hopefully they'll remain very quiet down by the river.
Okay, just letting someone in. Hey, I'm Kath McIntyre. Very nice to meet you all. So I actually work in the film and TV industry. So I actually work with script writers, helping them write. So I also work with female entrepreneurs, helping them launch their programs by using video and video stories to get to their audience. I've produced lots of documentaries and have worked on lots of feature films, but probably the work I'm most proud of is that I helped raise over $3 million for sick children for a telethon appeal. I have a counselling degree as well. That's where I met Kate. And so I know that working as a creative, that it is all about the mindset, and we'll be talking about that tonight. I have a 20-year-old son who has a disability, and I have a very big and crazy fur baby. And you will notice in tonight's presentation that there are lots of pictures of dogs, because Kate and I are kind of dog crazy.
And I was going to mention, we were talking about this before, Kath, as we were waiting, that because of your background in film and the creative writing, screenwriting and so on, we, talking about this, we found there was quite a lot of synchronicity, but common approach. So hence we're here together.
Yeah, screenwriting's very similar, very similar. You have a plan, but it's all about that additional help you need to keep the momentum going. So in this masterclass, you will learn what makes the difference between dreaming of writing a book or starting a book and actually having the tools and mindset and momentum to start writing and get published. In this masterclass is for you if you want to start writing, or you've already started and you've already, got your book idea and you've actually already started writing and you want to get your book finished and published so you can be of service. This masterclass is not for you if you think it will happen overnight without having a writing plan, sitting at your computer and putting in the work. I can see the chat, everyone, now. So we are really interested to know where you're at the moment. What stage are you at right now? Do you have an idea? Do you have no idea about what your book could be about, what the topic could be about, or what your expertise is? If that's the case, can you put a 1 in the chat? Please put a 2 in the chat if you have an idea. You've done all your research, but you haven't actually started writing yet. Could you put a 3 in the chat if you have started writing and you're going along quite well? Can you put a 4 in the chat, please, if you have finished writing your book and you need to get published? Okay, really interesting. Oh, we've got some 3s. We've got some people who have started writing. We've got some 1s and some 2s as well. All right, so haven't started writing or have just started. And a 4, we've got a 4. Fantastic. You've written your book and you want to get published. Well done. Great. We're going to have a great conversation at the end, I think, with everybody.
Yes.
And yeah, okay, that's lovely. Thank you for doing that. And just one more, just helps us understand who's here tonight. How confident are you right now that you can start and finish writing your book? And I did say we would use a lot of dogs tonight. So can you please put a 1 in the chat if you're not confident at all that you can start and finish your book? Can you put a 2 in the chat if you're mildly confident that you think you might be able to do it? Can you please put a 3 in the chat if you're moderately confident? And a 4 in the chat if you're very confident. There we have our super dog again. So here we go. Okay, really interesting. I love that. 3, and although I love the 1 dog. Great comment. We've got some 3s. We've got quite a few 2s. All right, so you're mildly confident. You think you might be able to do it. That's great. We've got a couple of 3s, moderately confident. Okay, that's really good. Thank you for sharing that with us. So everyone's kind of mildly confident tonight. That's great. All right. Thank you for indulging us with that little bit of fun. So in this masterclass, just to let you all know what we will not be covering, we won't be covering a magical overnight success model, where you kind of flick your fingers and you can knock out your book in a weekend. We won't be covering that. We won't be covering how to write a book without effort, right? It does take planning, and you will have to actually sit in a chair in front of a computer at some stage, and we'll be going into that. And we won't be telling you exactly what to write about. We won't be helping you choose your topics, because this is your unique writing journey. So it's very much has to come from your personal journey as well. But what we will be covering is your why. The reason why you want to write this book is so important. And we'll be talking about that more just in a minute. We'll be covering what the blocks and barriers are that can hold you back, having the right mindset, and we'll be covering the steps to successful writing. Can I just get everyone to mute themselves? Thank you. Great. What we'll also be doing at the end, I said we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. We're really interested to find out about you and what your topics and what you're thinking about writing. And plus at the end of this, we'll also email out the replay of this recording, and an ebook of Kate's on self-belief as well, because we appreciate your time and we appreciate you being here. And we will also be talking about a program that we're offering if you want to go deeper into how to be an author. So your must-haves for being an author and a writer is you have to get to know your why. We'll go into that more. You have to work on your mindset. We'll also be going into that more. Remove blocks and barriers. You have to have a writing plan. A plan's so important. You have to allocate time and energy. You have to get in front of that computer. And also find some momentum and try and make writing your book a joyous journey. First of all, I just want to talk about some of the myths that we've heard about writers, and some of these might have seen in films or on, on other kind of content that you've read. Some of the myths about writing might be, you're waiting for this one great idea. You think this one great idea, you're going to wake up one morning with this one great idea. I mean, that might be the case for some people, but generally not. It doesn't just kind of hit you like a thunderbolt. Some of the myths about writers are that you need to be in the perfect setting. You have to you rent out the Airbnb and sit there for the weekend and knock out your book. That's not necessarily so either. The other myth is that good writers only write when they're inspired. Well, we're going to kind of talk about tonight that you do need a plan and you do need to work out and carve out some hours every week to do your writing. Another myth, the last myth might be that you write a book and it will sell, you'll build it and they will come. Well, you do have to do a little bit of research and you do have to put a little bit of work in and plan your book. So we'll just dispel those myths for the moment. And we have a question for you. So what are the consequences, or what would your life look like if you were just remained stuck and not taking action and not writing that book that you've always dreamt about, versus adopting a helpful mindset and a writing plan to keep you more moving forward? We just want you to just ponder on that question for a little minute. So Kate, let's go into what we are going to focus on in this masterclass.
So first up, we're going to talk about 3 of the areas that have been mentioned. So your reasons for wanting to write, and your mindset, and overcoming blocks and barriers. So let's have a look at the next slide. So just again, a quick question about your why, because your why drives you. It's about your passion and your purpose often, and it motivates you. So if you could put the number in the chat box as to what your why might be, and if it is 6 other, then perhaps write down what your why is. Thank you.
Let's have a look what we've got. Okay.
We've got a few different things.
We've got a few 3s to help people, to be of service. That's really, really interesting. We've got some 4s, a 2.
And many. And that inspiration is a lovely why. Inspiring people.
4, Kate, legacy.
Yeah. So that's quite a common one, actually. I've run several writing workshops and talked to many people, and that one is a common experience. I want to leave something behind, have my story out there, or my expertise. So thank you for that. And I think we're all on the same page, basically. Probably a number of them apply to each of us. So thank you. Thanks, Kath. All right. So many of you would have seen the Ikigai model, and it is such a beautiful model around purpose. The Japanese model talked about the reason we get up each day, the reason for living. So it's an overlap between the 4 circles. So what you love to do, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, what you are good at. And at the center is your ikigai, or your purpose, your reason for getting up. So when we think about our writing, I think this model fits beautifully, because we want to write in an area that we know something about, whether, we're talking about non-fiction books. So whether it's about your story, your memoir, or if you're a traveler, your travel log, about that. Or if you have expertise in a particular field, then you may write a non-fiction book about that. What you love is important, because it is a journey, writing a book, and in a way, it's a bit of a marathon journey. It takes a lot of time, a lot of hours. So you need to have that love of what you're writing about, and the love of writing. So some passion there, and the mission. What the world needs is significant with writing, because we may think, oh, I will write this book on this particular topic. But unless we go out there and have a look at what is already out there, if we write on something that everyone else has written about, the world doesn't need that. And certainly a publisher's not going to look at it unless it's got an absolutely unique take on it. So we need to apply that to our writing. And what you can be paid for, ideally, if a book of yours is published, it's very nice if you can be paid some money, because you may have incurred costs getting it out there, but also you spend a lot of time. So it's nice if there's some money that follows the book. So think about this model and visualize it in relation to your writing. Thanks, Kath. So that's a little bit on why, and we'll now have a look at mindset. So you've probably heard different terms used in relation to mindset. So it's really how we're viewing things, how we're thinking about things, what we believe. And some of the common ones you hear about are growth mindset, that first came about in relation to education settings. And what we know about the brain is that our brain is capable of learning and changing all the way through our lives. And I remember my mum at 80 saying to me, and she was a person who would read books and listen to radio, and she'd jot things down. She had little notebooks and she'd write things down in it. And she said, you wouldn't believe it, Kate, but even at 80, I'm still learning something new every day. And writing is a process of growth and learning about your topic. So you may already have some expertise in an area, but I can assure you, when you put pen to paper or do your word processing, you will learn so much more, because you will be researching. The knowledge I've acquired about writing, the practical side of it, has really been a process since the 2000s, and being involved with writing. And I've learnt through trial and error, and through reading and asking questions and speaking to people. And so it is a growth area in relation to your knowledge of writing and publishing. A positive mindset, again, you would have heard a lot about positive psychology in recent years, and it's come into therapy and psychology in the West, and it was really developed because there was such a focus on illness and problems, that psychologists wanted to look at, well, what about people who want a greater sense of well-being, whether or not there were problems, and how do we foster that sense of well-being? And in fact, recent research that is amazing is that mental health problems are really on one continua and well-being is on another, and they influence each other. So when we perhaps experiencing a mental health issue, if we work on our general well-being, that helps the mental health issue, but also we can have a great sense of well-being even if we are dealing with a mental health issue. So that's an aside, because I always go down the mental health path. But a positive mindset in terms of writing, you know, it's about looking at your thinking, your beliefs about yourself, and about having a positive mindset about what the book can bring, that you will complete the book, that it will be meaningful to people, that it will meet your why, you know, you will help people, you will have a legacy. Another aspect of positive mindset is authenticity, and authenticity is about, you know, being true to yourself. And I think that needs to come through in whatever form of nonfiction writing you are undertaking. And also another aspect of positive psych is, and the positive mindset, is vulnerability. And you would have heard more about that in recent years through the work of Brené Brown. And I can assure you that you feel incredibly vulnerable when your writing goes out into the world. And I'm sure some of you can relate to that, because you are putting yourself out there and you are being vulnerable to judgment, basically. Some people will like your book and some people won't like your book. So it's an interesting process. The entrepreneurial mindset is, you know, what it sounds like. And you know, that's important in terms of writing, because we not only write the book, but then we have to get out into the world and do something with the book. And the challenge mindset is about overcoming challenges. And as you'll hear about, there can be some challenges along the way of the writing. So after reading about all of these mindsets, Kath and I have put them into an author mindset. And I don't know that I've heard that term before, but a combination of some aspects of all those other mindsets seem to fit. So I use the acronym WACC, W-A-C-C, so work. You know, you have to do the work, as Kath has said. A for authenticity, and I've added vulnerability in there. C for creativity, that's required and all the way along, and being flexible as well. And another C for courage. It does take a bit of bravery to commit to doing the work and doing your book and getting it out there, and also some compassion, another say in there along the way, which we will also talk about. That's compassion for yourself throughout the journey, and we'll come back to that. Thanks, Kath. All right, so overcoming blocks and barriers to your writing. I love this little film of the dog. So in the chat box, could you pop down any blocks and barriers you've experienced up to this point with your writing? Any blocks or barriers? I'll give you an example. Time might be, finding time might be a block or barrier. Okay, lots. Pain when sitting, yeah, absolutely. When I was working very hard with my recent book that I'll share a bit of information about afterwards, I sat for long periods, and it is hard. Self-belief, time in schedule, consistency, procrastination, big one.
We all know that one.
Yeah. Procrastination about chapter order, etc. Yes, many interests, workflow. I'm just going to enlarge that side. There was one above. I wanted to say nervous. Hold on. Here it is. Time nervous. Yeah, feeling nervous about the process. Yeah. Working out the structure. Absolutely. Getting the right angle. Yes. Issues with tension. Yes. Work life. Yeah. The focus on other things. Absolutely. Okay, so thank you for all of those. And I guess a lot of those are familiar to many of us. and certainly we're going to be talking about some of them. So Kath.
Mm-hmm. And whether
Side.
anyone will read it was the last one.
Oh, okay. Yes,
Yeah.
that's the greatest fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
No one will read it.
Yeah.
All right. So here are a few, and you have mentioned some of these. I just thought we'd hone in on a few of them. So sort of common fears related to writing. So that might be things like fear of failure. And it might be that no one reads it, or that it will be judged harshly, or, you know, even that you won't finish it. You'll spend years working on it and you won't finish it, or you won't get it published. So there may be many fears. Equally, for some people, it's actually fear of success. You know, what if it does okay? You know, what will that be like for me? And there was something else that I just wanted to put in there. Yeah, so sometimes the fears will trigger that sort of not good enough story that many people experience. It may not be quite so conscious. Sometimes it's a bit more unconscious, but you know, that fear of people thinking that you're not good enough, and you having that you know, criticism of yourself as well. So sometimes that story can get activated, and it's quite a common one in our society. And it really, part of it stems from the second point, comparison with others. So it's a natural human thing that we compare because it's about survival. So, you know, if you were walking along and there was a crowd of people who looked very angry and they all had weapons, you would want to compare yourself to them and probably, you know, go in a different direction because you want to keep yourself safe. But fortunately that doesn't happen too often, but what it transpires into is we're constantly comparing to other people. We're trying to measure up to them or to ideals. And of course, social media has bought into that in a big way. And, you know, as you know, people only put the best of themselves on social media, and people have this idea that their life is fabo, or they always look like that. And so they do the comparison thing. Or maybe comparing to other writers. Now, those of you who know me and what I write, which is self-help books and one textbook, my aim, as I said, is to make the complex simple and give people information and tools. Now, if that was compared to a highly creative, more narrative book, you can't actually compare them. They're completely different. But if you did compare them, you might think, oh, it's not as creative, it's not as whatever. So we just have to be mindful and watch out for those traps that come with comparison. And remember, fear leads to avoidance often. So if you don't like doing something, you'll avoid it. And if you have fears about the outcome of your writing, that can feed into point 3 with procrastination, but perfectionism can also feed into procrastination. So what I've learned in my writing is basically just start putting things in. It's not going to be perfect on the first day or even the 10th week. You know, you write a book over months and months, and there are many drafts. So it's not about perfectionism. It's about getting going, keeping that momentum, and working on your perfectionism or your procrastination. And I pulled out my men's book because I knew I had lists in there about perfectionism and procrastination. So a few tips. Okay, experiment with doing a good enough job instead of a perfect job and see how it goes. And certainly with your writing at the start, do good enough, good enough. It can be perfected down the track. And don't forget, there's editing processes as well that happen. Be aware of fears and deal with them. And sometimes talking to someone, a mentor or therapist or whoever, can help with that. Watch out for those self-critical thoughts, so point 4. And sometimes a common trap in thinking that can feed into perfectionism and self-criticism is being what we call black and white. You know, I've done a great job or I've done a terrible job, rather than seeing the bits in the middle. Practice relaxation and mindfulness. Now, one of the things that I do before I write very often is do a short meditation, just to get myself in a relaxed state where my thoughts can flow more. So when we do some meditation and mindfulness, often we can detach more from some of those self-critical thoughts as well. Be kind to yourself in your thinking. So this is the self-compassion. A lot of our thinking is self-critical, harsher. We're often harsher to ourselves than to other people. So always remember that compassionate voice. Can you apply that to yourself as you would others? But also a little trick is framing a thought as a question. So if you're being very negative about yourself, you know, I'm a hopeless writer, you know, ask a question. Is that true? What would a hopeless writer look like anyway? You know, just play with it a little bit. And often when you do that, you lighten it up. And in terms of procrastination, be aware of what's driving it, such as fear of failure. Work on your thoughts and your self-belief. Let go of the shoulds. You know, we can, in thoughts, we can choose our thoughts, and we can choose, rather than say should, you can say I would like to, or maybe, or possibly. And watch out for the avoidance and also the distractions. So sometimes when we're procrastinating, everything else is appealing. So if you can sort of be aware of it and minimize those distractions. Also, one of the things we'll talk about a little bit later is setting goals, and remember to, if we're procrastinating, being mindful of what our goal is, but also breaking that down into baby steps. And sometimes I have to say to myself, set up the desk, get the coffee, put the other stuff away, get your computer on, just sit down, have a look at what you did last time. Where do you want to start? You know, just baby steps, sometimes just talking yourself through it. Okay, so there's a few tips and a few things that may help with overcoming barriers and blocks. Okay, so we've thrown my story into it because sometimes people look at what you might have done in terms of writing and thing, and they see that as a snapshot. Oh my God, there's those books. You know, it must have been easy. It happened overnight, you know, whatever. So, but that's just a snapshot. So my writing story started very young. I loved the idea of writing books from when I was quite young, and I would write little books in school holidays. I once wrote my older sister, who I admired greatly, a series of little books all about love, and I gave them to her as a present at the end of the school holidays. So it was there from right back early. And I have a confession, I'm not much of a fiction reader at all. And I have always read nonfiction predominantly, and that continues today. So that's part of the story. My why was about initially it was more just, you know, sharing ideas and, you know, gifts to people and sharing a little bit of knowledge. And then as I got older, it grew a little bit more into legacy. You know, it would be nice to be, you know, as you face your mortality and all that sort of stuff as a teenager and young adult, you know, it's like it'd be nice to have books to leave behind. And then as I got into the health professions and my motivation for that was helping people, of course, that became one of the major major things. But in terms of blocks and barriers, I had, and you might have seen this in one of the little films, I had some very significant criticism of my writing by a teacher in front of a class in year 12 who believed in humiliation. And then there was another situation in a Viva with 3 people, and one person made a very, very awful comment, which was very hard to deal with. And in a way that put the brakes on for a while. And of course, then you get distracted by life as well. You get busy with work and family. And then, of course, you think about writing and sit down to write, and then lo and behold, other things happen. There's sickness in the family or whatever it is. And also you need to earn a living along the way. So everyone experiences blocks and barriers. But I guess the main thing, I think, in my story has been perseverance. Knowing that why, having a goal, this is going to happen. I need to get this out there, and it is going to happen no matter what. And I have written on aeroplanes, I have written in coffee shops, I have written at 5 o'clock in the morning, at 2 a.m. in the morning. If you want it to happen, you may have to deal with the issues, but then you've got to come back to it. Don't let it derail you for a very long period. Okay. Thank you, Kath. Okay, so we want you to be clear about your why and develop that author mindset and work on overcoming any barriers or blocks that you may have experienced or are continuing to experience. Because achieving that dream of becoming a writer and having your book published is amazing. And I would like to share with you, because it is hot off the press, it arrived in the post a couple of days ago. I don't know can you see that, Kath? Yeah. So this is a book that's coming out September 3rd, The Flourishing Woman. And I can honestly say, when you have put in the couple of years' work and it arrives with a beautiful cover, and the paper is beautiful, and the setting out, they've done so well, and you can see it as a book, it is joyous. I can only describe it as pure joy. And I wish that you all have that. That would be wonderful. Thanks, Kath. So Kath and I have been talking about this for quite a long time, but after doing a couple of writing workshops, and so many people approach me at conferences and they're writing and they may have half written a book, and they need a little bit of guidance, some tips. So we decided to finally put together a program, and it involves 6 steps to help you achieve that dream of getting your non-fiction book published, whatever genre, whatever form it's in. And so I'll talk you through those 6 steps. But there's more in this. Oh, here we go. I'll talk you through the 6 steps.
You want to go through? Yeah, the steps.
Let's just go to the steps.
Yeah.
So these are the 6 steps in the program. We've talked about your mindset and why. The next one is choosing and researching your topic, developing your writing plan, overcoming blocks and barriers. We've talked a bit about that, navigating publishing options, and on being an author. So we're going to look at some of the key points from the program, and I'll talk you through those. All right, so the first step or module is about your mindset and why. And I think just remember, you are all unique people and you will have your own reasons for writing, and it will give you your own sense of meaning, and you have your unique things to say. So that is an important component of your why. And just that last point, it does require you to take action. So well done for being here. That's part of the action. And I know some of you have done quite a lot of writing by your responses earlier. So you're almost there. I won't say too much more about that one because we have talked about that, Kath. So choosing and researching your topic, there's a few key points, and I can throw a couple of tips in here. You do need to do a bit of market research when you have an idea, and that idea may generate from your area of passion, or perhaps you've been contemplating it for a while, or maybe you do wake up with an idea at 7 in the morning or 5 in the morning. But you need to have a look at what's already out there, because as I alluded to, really what we aim for is some sort of gap in the market. If we want to go down the publishing path, separate to that would be if you, for example, are doing your memoir, then that's a different thing. Getting that out there is important to you, and it may be a certain audience that are very interested in reading your memoir. But for some of the other areas, even a travel log, it has to be a little bit different from what's already out there in the market. So we look for something a bit unique, or a bit of a gap. And we need to understand the audience. So absolutely key, and I think we forget about this sometimes, is we are writing the book for people, the audience, to read. And so the most important people are the audience. Our, we actually come second to that in a way. So we have to be very aware and very mindful of, okay, who am I writing for? And what do they want? What do they need? What do I need to give them in the book? And so that will vary a little bit depending on what you're writing and what type of book, but just keep that in mind. And we do need to think about what's our goal, ultimately, and set a smart sort of goal related to the writing. So an example might be that, you specifically know what the topic of your book is about. So say that my women's book, I want to write a book for women about mental health and wellbeing. It's a self-help book. I want to see it published in 2 years' time. Is that achievable? Pretty well. If not, you can make it longer. If you think you can do it faster, you can make it shorter. Is it relevant? Hopefully you've done your market research, so you know it's relevant to the audience, and you've put in a time frame of the couple of years. So there's your goal, and to see it published in the 2 years. So to be finished in 18 months. So all of that might tie into your SMART goal. But again, you have to break that down into very small steps. That's part of the process, because that can feel very daunting. So the first step might be simply developing your writing plan, working on that. And a little hint for along the way, and keeping stepping, because we want to keep stepping, even if we go off track, bring ourselves back to taking ourselves through those small steps to achieve the goal. A person called BJ Fogg wrote a lovely book called Tiny Habits, I think, and they talk about using prompts. So like reminders in your diary. I put in my diary writing. That's my prompt. I have a paper diary. Some people would do it on their calendar or phone. So a prompt, reminders as well to do it. I put writing in the diary. I need perhaps a phone reminder that, yes, it is writing time now, and also little celebrations. So when you do sit down and do the writing you'd planned, a small celebration might be making a nice cup of tea, or telling a friend, I did it, or a happy dance in the kitchen, whatever your type of celebration is. And that reinforces our behaviour. So remember always, writing is a behaviour, and we have to work with ourselves as humans who have flaws and foibles You know, we can go off track, we can get distracted. We have to work with behavior and our motivation. And that is one way you can work with it and encourage yourself to take those small steps. Conducting a literature review if it's relevant. So for self-help or maybe a travel log, you might put in information about a particular place that you're visiting, or a textbook. You know, you're going to have to look at what's already out there in terms of facts and knowledge, and you know, bring that into your knowledge base, and you may bring it into your book. Okay, next one, your writing plan. So this this can be quite detailed because it encompasses not just the sort of time frame, but also when you're going to write, when you're going to make that space to write. Is it a Sunday morning? Is it a Friday night? Whatever it is. How many words do you need to write? So it's interesting, having written for a number of years, I don't know how many in total now, but say 15 years or so, the word count has dropped down because of phones and social media. People don't pay attention to the books in the same way as previously, apparently. So the word count when I started writing was 50 or 60,000 words. Now the publisher says aim for 40,000. Now, I failed on that with the women's book because there was so much to talk about. I kept going and ended up 75,000 words. And I said to them, sorry about this, but it's 75,000 words. What do you want to do about it? And they said, well, let's read it. And they kept it at 75,000, which I was very pleased with. And of course, that has implications for their costs. So I was very thrilled because obviously it's more paper, it's heavier, all of those things are part of it. Okay, so word count. Also the, you know, where you're going to write. Do you have a space? Do you write on the couch, or do you write in the kitchen, or do you have a study? You know, where do you want to write? You have to determine the final topic, the audience, and also the voice that you use in your book, because you will have a different writing voice possibly for different audiences. So I had to, you know, I wrote a book for men that was published in 2020. I've done one now for women. I can say that the voice is slightly different in the men's book to the women's book. Now, some of that came, say in the men's book, I was working a lot with military and soldiers at the time, and I got them to read some of it, and they wanted the tools. Be simple, be straight forward with me, just tell me what to do. And so my voice was a bit more direct. In the women's book, it's a little bit more discussive, like we're having a conversation. And I guess that's how I talk to my friends, how I talk to my clients. And so when I write like I'm talking to someone, and that just came through in a different voice in the women's book. But we need to be a little bit deliberate about what is the voice going to be. It's also to do with the grammar and, you know, is it first person, third person, those sorts of things. I'm not a grammar expert, but we do need to think about that as well. We also need to plan the book structure. That can change over the time, so we don't need to get it right the first time, but we need a draft. And it may be there are book sections and chapters underneath, or it might be 10 chapters. We need to have a bit of a plan, partly for us, partly for a publisher. And we need to be accountable to ourselves all the way through. So what I love to do is tick things off. So having that writing plan, again, the tick, a little bit of dopamine in the brain, it reinforces the behavior of completing that part of the plan, and it's very reinforcing. Okay, next one. The blocks and barriers, I think we've talked quite a bit about this already. The bottom point, I can't emphasize this enough. One of the most useful things I ever learned about for myself was cognitive behavior therapy. Acceptance commitment is fantastic as well. There are many wonderful approaches, but those two approaches in particular can help us manage our own thoughts and feelings. You can read about them online. There are lots of good books about them in the men's book and the women's book. There's loads of information on CBT and ACT. So understand yourself, work with your own thinking so that you can keep that momentum happening and deal with some of the blocks and barriers. Thank you. Publishing options. The main thing is to understand your options, and there are a few. The three main options are commercial publishing, so that's having a contract with a publishing company. Then there's partnership publishing. So you contribute to the costs of publishing the book and the partner helps with distribution. You split the profits. Self-publishing, you do all of it yourself. And there's lots of platforms and things that can help with that. There are advantages and disadvantages of each, and I go into those in the online program. I'm not an expert on all of them. My advice is read about it, think about it, read it, read if there's any agreements with anyone, whether it's self-publishing or commercial publishing or partnership, read it very carefully, read all the fine print. It can be a costly process. So self-publishing and partnership publishing may cost you thousands of dollars. Commercial publishing, the publisher takes the risk financially, but you get a smaller percentage of any profit. But the advantage too with the commercial publishing is they have very broad reach all over the world. And some of the royalties are related to selling the rights to the book in other countries. One of my books has been translated into Japanese, one into, I think it was German. Yes, German. And one into the men's book was translated into Bulgarian, whatever the language is in Bulgaria. So there are different things that happen through commercial publishing. The other thing to know is you can start with self-publishing or partnership publishing. And if you have some success with that, then a commercial publisher may be more likely to look at your book as a viable option. How do you engage with all of these? A lot of it is doing the research. As I said, I've put lots of sort of tips and things in there. One of the key things is networking. Some of it is who you meet and who you know. And some of it is your presence out there, whether it's academic or on social media. Publishers look, they are constantly coming up with ideas. Some of them write themselves. They're looking to fill the gaps. So if they want to book on, I don't know, the benefits of nature on health, they will be searching who's out there doing this, who's written on it, who's running workshops, and they may approach people. Go to writing events. You might meet publishers. Join writing organisations that give you information, and you can go to things and learn about the publishing side of it. But yeah, that bottom point is really important. Number 6, this is the exciting one. So being an author. So how does that title feel for you? If you were to say to yourself, I am an author, some of you have written a lot of your book. You have authored that. And it will be published, in whatever format, if you choose to make that happen. So it takes a little bit of adapting to that title, I think, because sometimes it's very different from the other things that we do. But when you take on that title, you're also taking on a role. The work doesn't stop when your book is published. It's a different work that begins. So whether you're working with a partnership publisher or a commercial publisher, they will do certain things in relation to marketing. They're mostly interested in that in the very initial phase, you know, get it out there, get as many sales, then we've got to move on to the next book. So we also need to do lots of work in terms of our own promotion and marketing and keep that momentum going and get it out in different areas. So for example, with the women's book coming out, I've already had an email from the publisher about what they're doing, what things they need me to fill in online, like update Amazon, do my public library stuff, etc. And please let them know if I have any contacts, if I know any influencers. I don't know too many influencers. This is the big thing, etc. So there's communication already happening. But for myself, I also have some local bookstores the books are in. I've already dropped in and shown them the book. I do regional and rural talks. I've done that with the last book. I'll get out there again and do those and meet people and give information and help in that way. Last book I worked with Mark Aston, who some of you in Adelaide would know of, and he now has his own media business and lots of contacts, so he gets different connections with marketing. Kath's been helping me with getting in touch with podcasters and that sort of thing. So we have to work very hard. And during that process, we also have to practice all the way along from beginning to end, although it doesn't sort of end. We have to practice that self-care and self-compassion because we have to pace things. Sometimes it doesn't quite work out that way, but even if things are a bit mad for a little while, we need to have some downtime then. And I will just say one other thing, going back to where do you write? I know some of you know me, and at times I will take time away and go somewhere, preferably near some nice nature where I can walk and get out, but I will have a writing week and I will get up and have breakfast, write, you know, say from 8 till 2 p.m, probably go out, have some lunch there or go out to lunch, go for a nice walk and then get back to it at 5. And that's one way of getting a chunk of work done. And I know some of you also do that. So there are different things we can do. And, you know, I am financially in charge of myself. You know, I have to earn my own living. There's no one else earning a living for me. So we have to plan and make that happen. I don't necessarily go to the fancy Airbnbs. But whatever works for you, it's about making it happen. Thanks, Kath. Okay, so do you want to talk about this one, Kath?
Yeah, sure. So Kate's just gone through, so the 6-step program, she went through all the modules, so now you've got a better idea of what you'll be learning. And it's expert information straight from Kate, who has, you know, like she said, gone through the ups and downs, and she's learnt from doing it over the years. So, you know, it's full of expert information and resources, and also a number of videos that Kate has recorded to help you along the way, and also some meditations. Kate mentioned that she meditates before she writes, so she's put in a couple of meditations in there as well. So the 6-step program that Kate's been talking about, if you want to take some action and purchase that, I will here's the link down here. It's normally $5.97, it's $3.97 tonight. I'll put this link in the chat. And what we can do, also what Kate offers, if you are interested, is some one-on-one coaching down the track. You can email her as well, and I'll put her email in the chat, and we'll also send this replay to you with all the information as well, so you can have a look at that. But we are going to go into a Q&A now. So Kate and I want to thank you so much for spending the last hour with us. We hope it's been helpful. I know that there's a lot of similarities to what I do, Kate, as well in the film industry when working with writers and screenwriters, you know, very similar blocks and